Morning, my name's Kevin Davidson at Mindful Masculinity, and I'm with three other colleagues at the Clanner Brothers Facebook group. Like to introduce yourself, please, gentlemen?
Who's going first? Was I going first?
You can
Did
go
I read
first.
that somewhere? Okay, all right. So my name's Michael Hughes. I live in Wollongong, New South Wales, Australia. So it is, while it's a lovely morning for these three gentlemen, it's the evening for me. I've lived in Australia now since about 1981. I was originally from the UK. I met my wife when we were quite young, at 16-ish. We were both working as had part-time jobs in the local McDonald's, actually, and and we've been together ever since. And of course, the reason we're here is that we ended up being childless. We went through a very rigorous and emotional journey to try and have children. We always knew that we would need some help, according to the doctors. But, you know, when you're young, what does that mean? What does help mean? You know, we just thought, well, you know, you do it and it'll happen. But unfortunately, we found out that my wife had polycystic ovary syndrome. And then we've also found out that depending on how much weight I'm carrying and how healthy I am, my sperm count fluctuates as well. So I remember when we were first doing IVF, my sperm ability was really slow, which may not surprise some people because I never do anything in a hurry. But yeah, so I guess we just had a bit of a double whammy, really. And so we got to, we started in our mid to late 20s, and we got to about 38, and we realized that we're absolutely knackered. We were, well, the way I like to call it is broken, where we had looked back and gone, we haven't had a holiday in a decade, as an example, because all that time was spent having IVF procedures. And we didn't realize that, well, in the thick of it, you don't see it, but it's not until you stop and go, bloody hell, we were depressed. And we really were. So we sort of said, that's it. 38, we went, no, we're done. So then we chose to go on a few big holidays. So here in Australia, we have a really awesome thing called long service leave. So if you're with an employer for over 10 years, you actually get an additional 10 weeks paid holiday time on top of what you would normally get annually. So with that, we went around the world and had an awesome time, totally away from the baggage that we left here in Australia. We went to America, Mexico, Canada, the UK. We did a whirlwind trip around Europe, a bus trip that was sort of for people of our age. So it was quite a quick one. That was after 10 weeks of going around the world. So we survived that. We're still talking to each other even now. So, you know, but it was testing at times. And then we did the same again in 2006, but we went the reverse way around the world because my cousin in the UK was getting married, and that was great. And we did a road trip down the west coast of America. Awesome. And what it did was it put us in a really good spot, a really good place mentally. So my wife says to me, let's do it again. Yeah, all right. Okay, one more time. And we did IVF again, and my wife got pregnant on her birthday. And on Father's Day of that same year, she had a miscarriage. And so that did it for me. I was the emotional roller coaster that I know probably don't have to tell, you know, guys, most guys that have been through it, but the emotional roller coaster that takes you on was just way too much. And I remember sitting on the lounge, crying my eyes out, going, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And so my wife took that on board, and then also going to see the doctor, he pretty much said, look, stop, there's no point. We were 40 by that time. And so, yeah, that's when we drew a line in the sand, and I'm now 54. And I would say it's taken me a good 10 years to be at the spot where I am right now. So at the spot where I can talk about it, I can talk to you guys. Well, I talk to anyone about it, really. I'll probably piss a lot of people off actually talking about it. But I don't care. I really don't care. Because as I've immersed myself in this community and things with the podcast that I'm part of and, well, Childless work that I'm part of, it's important both for us as individuals to be able to express how we feel and tell people our stories so that they understand. And sometimes that's all it takes. I have a number of people who are parents in my life that actually say, I never realised. Wow. And now they know that I'm part of World Childless Week and I'm part of a podcast. They're actually quite, I don't know what the word is, but they're very proud for me. And because, as one of my friends said, he said, man, if you just help one person, that'll be enough. If you just help one person along their journey, that would be reward in itself. And it is. But I'm finding that the more we talk, the more people we're helping along the way. And so, yeah, that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm going to, continue to talk about it. And I'm sure more of that will come out as we chat. And I'm going to shut up and give someone else a go.
Thank you, Michael. I'll pass over to Robin Hadley.
Right. Hi, I'm Robin Hadley. I'm in Manchester in the UK, and I'm a mediated childless man now. I'm 61. My journey to not being a father, to being childless by circumstance or childless not by choice, is quite long, I'm afraid, and varied. But it shows how many different influences impact on your reproductive outcomes. So I was born in a working class area of Manchester called Old Trafford. I come from a family of 8 children. I'm 7th youngest, and I fully expected to become a dad, and that was the narrative generated at that time by my parents. For example, in my early teen years, we were having some dispute or other, and they said, and they refused me whatever it was I was after, and they said, this is the sort of decision you're going to have to make when you're a parent. So you can see how embedded that was, and I've done a lot of research on this area. A lot of the chaps I've spoken to have said that, it was just natural. It was going to happen that I was going to become a dad, and there was no reason why I shouldn't be like that. And there's a thing called the package deal for men, which is leave school. If you're sort of middle class, go to university. If you're working class, get a job. Again, for the middle class, get a job, find a partner, have a family. And that's really interesting in that arc of life. The peak of it is have a family. And I was really quite shy and awkward as a teenager. So getting into a relationship was quite scary, approaching someone, that sort of thing. But eventually I did find someone to approach who didn't reject me straight away. And in my mid-20s, we got married. And at some point in that time, we started to try to start a family. And I think my first wife did have a miscarriage, but in those days, which was in the 1980s, quite often I think there was a code around that called a heavy period or a very heavy period, a very late heavy period. And so there was sort of an exclusion of men from that sort of area. And we divorced fairly quickly, actually. So by the time I was 30, I was divorced. there was an economic problem in the UK at that time. I kept the house. The mortgage interest rates went up to 13%. Interest rates, wow, remember those? And I had very little money. So for about 2 years, I was just living hand to mouth before I eventually sold the house and got back into the dating scene, or going out, trapping off, as we would call it locally, so nicely. And I did find another person that changed. It wasn't quite so shy, a bit more outgoing, and we got on really well. And at one point she said to me, you know, I want to have your babies. And I was fine with that compared to my first attempt with my first wife. I was quite scared about it, and anxious about how good a provider I would be, how we would manage, because I wasn't in a great job. I was in a very steady, safe job, but not great, and I'm not particularly ambitious. So that was a worry. But at this time, when she said that, that's fine, I'll become a house husband, I'll look after the kids, because she was really intelligent. She was going to have a great career, it's obvious. And I was very happy with that. I was sort of looking forward to that. But then we broke up. So there's a couple of things coming through. Timing of breakups, selection of partner is another one. And then late on in my 30s, I met my wife, and she's a few years older. And she's a healthcare professional who worked in the community and worked with mothers and families, particularly families with special needs. And we had this discussion because I wanted to become a dad, and I was really, really broody in my mid-30s. After that, split up with that second significant partner, really broody, and my peers were all seemingly, you know, just pulling kids out of their pocket. They're all having kids, and I was really, really jealous. I worked with one guy, and I was so jealous I couldn't have a brew with him anymore. I'd avoid him, walk around the building the other way. I just couldn't face. And we did have a chat at one point, and he said, you know, what's up? Because we're not talking, and we've known each other years. And I said, you've got the life I should have. And that's how it felt. And when it's the arc and the peak is having the family, all I could see was not being at that peak. And the felt difference was like a pit there. So I met my wife, and we had this discussion about, and she said, I don't want to become a mother. I did do, but because of my age, because she's a few years older, and my experience of dealing with families with special needs children, I can't face that now. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to find somebody else. And my analysis of myself at that time was, well, who would have me? You know, I'm really lucky. I've got a beautiful woman who loves me, and I love her. Where would I go at 39? You know, all my peers seem to be married and have kids. So I'd be looking for somebody probably 10 or 5 years younger. Where would they go? How would I be? And sort of weighing it up like that, I decided that no, it wasn't going to happen. So then in my mid-40s, I changed careers, changed as a counsellor, did some research because of counselling. I did an MA, and it had to be something you experienced. And I said I was really broody in my 30s, and my supervisor woke up and said, yeah, do that as your dissertation. And that's when I found there's really nothing around men's experience of wanting to be a dad or not being a dad. So there's stats about it, but not the lived experience, the men's stories, and that absence of narrative, I think, is what's driven me on to do the research I do, to put something out there so guys can say, as Michael's found out, and I'm sure Andy will say as well, you know, this is a story. You're not alone. You're not isolated. This is quite common, actually, to be a childless by circumstance, and the different reasons in addition to infertility that why you might not be that. And one of those is economics. If you're moving around for your job, if there's an economic pressure on, then people tend not to have children for all sorts of reasons. So that's me.
Okay, thanks, Robin. I'll hand you over now to Andy Harrod.
Hi all. Yeah, I'm Andy. Yeah, just it was interesting what Robin said there about circumstances. I always thought of us as by infertility, but yet the doctor said for us it's unexplained. But I think in my head, economics, could I provide? What is my job? Is this all stable enough? Certainly came into sort of my decision making, my fear of am I ready? So yeah, I suppose in that it just makes me think the reasons we're not dads aren't that simple. I think there is a lot of factors coming into it. And so yeah, I suppose I'll go back a bit in time. Like Michael, I met Rachel early on, not in a McDonald's, but sorry, I'm the cough. But at university, both 19, and we got together in the second term. We lived in the same halls. It was really bizarre. Looking back now, meeting the love of my life, like my first day of university, this sort of adventure. I'm not really sure what I'm doing geography because that seems to be what I was good at. But that's all I really sort of knew of where I was going. But yeah, I met Rach, and that just seemed to be where I wanted to be, was with her. And we started going out, got engaged within a couple of months, and then spent 9 years engaged. We lived together, we bought a house. There was little snippets of conversation around having children. Certainly her desire seemed more at the forefront of our lives. And she's the one who sort of finally got us to get married, to have a wedding, have a celebration with our friends and family. Because other friends were getting married and starting to have kids. And it's like, I do remember one conversation, we were walking through like a caravan park on the coast, I think in Norfolk, where I'm from. And she was talking about how she used to go to caravan parks like that with her mum and dad and her brother, and she really liked it. And I was just thinking, yeah, this would be great. We'll be able to bring our kids here. We'll be able to do something like this, and this would be really cool. And it's like just this assumption we would have children, that there was no question about it. So there was that assumption. There was then from school the sense of, you go near a girl, you'll get her pregnant. So there's this thing of, you don't need to worry about this as well. And then I think, like I was saying at the beginning, there's those fears of the jobs in my 20s. They weren't really what I wanted to do. I weren't necessarily getting paid that well. We were just about being able to pay the mortgage, etc. And yeah, so there's those different factors that this would happen, but I was also worried, could I do it, like in terms of the vision, and not really thinking about that holiday memory, that sense of this will be really cool, that actually love, care, that would be enough. Yeah, we need material stuff, but it's like the important stuff got lost in overcomplicating it, I suppose. And then yeah, we got married, and we were just before we were 30, and then we started trying properly, in a sense, for kids, for family, and it didn't happen. And like, I think like Robin said, there was some early miscarriages. Rachel certainly late a few times, and there was a faint pregnancy test. I remember being on a stag do with a stinking hangover, and Rach rang up and sounded really excited, and I was like, wow. And I was trying to hold that while also thinking, can I hold what's in my stomach? And it was like, the next thing I knew, 2 hours later, we're back in the pub at 11 trying to drink, and I'm like, oof. But there was that sense that news was, perhaps I'm rose tinting, but it sort of, that got me through the second day in a sense. But then by the time I got home, or a few days later, that hope had gone. And there was something about that sense of there being hope, and then it fading. And we went through different procedures, examinations of doctors and that. And then we got into IVF, and a weight did seem to lift the first time we did IVF. It felt like we're getting some support, some help, because it felt a very lonely journey individually and as a couple that we were on. Other friends are having kids. They didn't seem to be having any problems. And so we tried the first IVF and it was successful. Rachel's pregnant. I remember sitting somewhere, we'd been given a voucher for an afternoon tea, and we just sat there smiling at each other, and we just knew she was pregnant, and she was. And then like a few weeks later, we lost our baby, and it was, yeah, it's sort of, I use the word miscarriage sometimes, and sometimes it's that we lost our baby, because to us, it was our baby. It was beyond the collection of cells. It was like, this felt like we'd done the difficult part. But as we found out later, really conceiving wasn't the difficult part, it was holding on. And that was a bit that became left unexplained. And yeah, so after that loss, we were just, I don't know, floating, I suppose. And we weren't sure what to do next. Rach was less keen on another round of IVF. We started actually looking at adoption. But there was a couple of things there. One was then my brother and his wife fell pregnant, and I'm a twin. And I had this thing that it's something to do with me. My parents took a while to have both my brother and I. And I was like, well, maybe we should just have one more go. Maybe it'll work. And also with the adoption, there was a big fear being judged. Will I be good enough? They were like, you can't have your cat sleeping in your bedroom. You need to put locks on your kitchen doors. And I was like, this seems such overkill, because you wouldn't do that if you just had a kid. It just felt the desire there, that desire to give another child a home, love, care, wasn't enough again. It was overcomplicated again. And we ended up going on holiday, had a really nice time in Greece, and came back and tried IVF the following year. Rachel took redundancy, and so there wasn't that pressure of going to work. It felt like she could just sit and rest. It was almost like there wasn't that stress. But then the second IVF, it was unsuccessful, and like I remember we'd ordered a book about pregnancy, about looking after it, and it came the same day that the negative test. We had the negative test, and I remember just dropping it, and there's this bud as it sort of goes through the bedroom floor and through the house, and it's just, not literally, just the noise. There's no hole in the floor, but it was just like the sense this is over, that we couldn't afford another IVF. We'd put money towards this second one, and that made no difference. And it just thought, this is a business, because on the one hand, the IVF people saying is unexplained, but if we can do more and more tests with you and then find out the reason, and you can do more rounds, and eventually you sort of have it. And it was like, but that doesn't make sense to the evidence. And it felt like you're just trying to sell us something, and it just, that hope of having a kid just got really toxic, where that's all we sort of tried to do. And we'd work, we'd function, we'd try for children, you'd go for the IVF, you'd pick yourself back up, you'd try again, and it was just really wearing. And I'm not really sure when I came to that point of, I said it was over, but we were still obviously trying in a sense, but not with the hope, I think, with the sense that this isn't actually going to happen. But then a few years after that, she had another late period, and there was this sense, but at that stage you were too scared to test, because it was almost like, we get the positive, we almost know there'll be something soon, and there was, and it was just almost like you spend that time just holding your breath. And it was definitely after that I then properly did some grief work, like took some time off and looked at my process, looked at my grief, looked at what was going on. And I think that's the thing that helped me the most, was actually say it's okay to stop. It's okay to look at this. You don't have to be just the one that keeps going to support Rach, to pretend it's all okay. I think, and yeah, and then through that, that's how I met Robin, Michael, and obviously later on Kevin. Started off writing about my experience here and there, and then going on to podcasts, mainly the one Michael's part of, doing a radio show, Robin, and yeah, and becoming part of the Clan of Brothers and helping out there. And it just seems, perhaps for me, that's part of my healing. I'm not really sure why I sort of put myself out there. It's bloody hard work. It's painful, as you can see there on YouTube. I'll be sort of half in tears, but it feels like that's what I needed when in my 30s. It felt so lonely that I didn't know to reach out. Rach through Gateway did point me to Robin's site. I was just in no place to engage, to admit that this could be our reality. And so I suppose, yeah, part of me is doing this at 41. It feels like, I feel old, but I don't know, young as well, I guess, in this game. And it's like, yeah, and it just feels like, yeah, to do something, to say it's okay to struggle through 20s, 30s, people be in their 40s trying this, and it's like, and later, and it's like, put together, you're not alone, as Robin said, that there's many of these stories, and there's more of us than you think. And I think having that community is where I'll get my healing, but also through offering back is where I'll heal. Yeah, and I'll stop there. Okay.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, my story. I've got one brother, and my mother is one of 10. My father was a lonely child. So when I was growing up, our household was very male orientated. My father was very decisive, quite strong, self-reliant. And my mum really had the emotion in our family, where she actually showed no emotion. So growing up, I related vulnerability, sadness to my mum, and being in that family, I followed my dad, which was about being strong and being, self-reliant, and about, I suppose, enduring is the way to say it. And in the background, because I had on one side 15, 17 cousins, I thought it would just happen that I would want to be a father sometime, like my grandfather, and it would be no problem at all. I grew up, I was quite an active guy. I loved sports, I had a lot of friends. I was a typical guy. I probably spent most of my 20s and teens trying to stop people getting pregnant. And I just thought that at some point I'd follow my parents when they got married in their late 20s, get a family next, and everything would be ticking along. I met my wife-to-be when I was 28. We stayed together for 2 years. We got married when I was 30. And I thought, right, kids are on the way the next year. It just didn't happen. And the more it carried on that way, the more anxious the both of us became. The more people from my family were not asking questions, but were giving hints as to what's going on. We started getting advice from people as to how to conceive. I know it was very well intended, but it didn't help. And the finger was being pointed at me, saying that it's obviously you that's the problem. So I did tests, and my fertility fluctuated. 1 month it was normal. 3 months later it was infertile. 3 months later it was in the middle. It was just a roller coaster. And I was in an environment where I was with, let's say, alpha males. Some of them had kids. Some of them were going out in sports dressing rooms. There's a lot of banter going on about Jaffas and, men, real men, and all these things. And I just felt very, very isolated, and I became a little bit introvert because I didn't want people to know that I was trying, and I didn't want to give them ammo to actually have a go at me, and I didn't talk about things. I became less confident. Then I found that my wife had complications as well, and that added to the issue. So a bit like Michael and Andy, we decided to do IVF. Now, IVF, this is about 15, 16 years ago, and it's still today, it still gives me shivers, just the experience, giving your partner the injections and feeling helpless. That's the worst thing, is that she's going through all this. She's the one that's getting the attention, and you're just there trying to do your best and provide the injections and provide the support. And we went for the first treatment, and we had I think there was two that were implanted in my ex-wife, and we got a pregnancy test, and it was saying, yeah, it's been successful. And for the next 2 weeks, I couldn't sleep, because every time my wife got up in the middle of the night, I was just dreading, thinking she's going to say, you know, she started her period, or something's happened, you know. And it was awful the first 2 weeks, and then we had to go back to confirm about the pregnancy in the IVF treatment. And it was the 11th night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I can remember it really vividly, that she got up, and then I just heard a scream, and I just knew. I didn't even get up. I just knew what had happened, and I didn't know. I just was there emotionless, thinking, a bit like Andy's, that I felt I'd lost. Well, it was a baby, you know. It actually been conceived. It was a person, and it'd gone, and it was so devastating. I was angry, but I was just really just flat, absolutely flat. I had nothing more to give to my wife at that time. I tried to be strong, but I could just basically have just, you know, slipped into the earth and disappeared. I kept it in. The next day, I decided to go and play football. I just needed to get out of the house, and that. Didn't tell people what was going on. They didn't know we were going through IVF, and I'm surprised I didn't get sent off. I was running around like an absolute animal. And I felt like I could just run and run. And it was just, the pain was really intense. The counselling afterwards, it seemed to be more concentrated on my wife than me. I kind of also did the good thumbs up. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm here for her. But I didn't feel I had the support. I felt very much alone. I couldn't talk to my friends at the time. My parents were very supportive, but I felt I'd let them down. I'd let down everybody, and I just didn't want to engage. And that was the hardest thing, to be alone in this. And suddenly this thing about being self-reliant and being strong just didn't seem to work for me. I had to really give in and become vulnerable. And I broke down in one session. I cried really hard for the first time in a long time. I think we left it 6 months to go do again. And the second term was horrible, because we did blastocysts, so it's where the two come together. And you have to wait, I don't know how many days it was, to see if they actually form. And then we got the news that one had died, second one had died. And then they put one into my wife, but it was literally, I think, I can't remember, it's a while ago, we went out, and she said, I can feel what this is I'm starting my period here. The second time wasn't as traumatic, because I faced it the first time, but I just felt completely flat, unmanly, failure. The impact it had on my life, looking back now, because of been able to do this with working with you guys, actually. My marriage did break down. My health suffered, I put on weight. I was not looking after myself. And I'd lost 2 jobs. I'd lost 2 jobs from just poor performance and didn't really care. So that was the biggest impact on me with this. And the only way really I was able to move on was really to come to that really, really painful realization that I wasn't going to be a dad. That's the only thing. And I held on to that for so long. And there had to be a situation where I needed to acknowledge that. I did actually seek support, and that's the biggest thing, is that I sought support, and I worked with a coach. I worked on training, and it helped me to actually reset and take ownership. And that's the thing that I actually say to people now that I help, is about taking ownership of your masculinity, taking ownership of taking responsibility and defining how you want to move forward. I realized that my life was being led and based upon societal and cultural expectations that were beyond me. They were nothing to do with me, but I was actually thinking that is what defined me, and that was the norm. So this is what the healing process helped, is that I was able to establish my own identity, my own perception of masculinity, and that helped me to heal. And I met my partner 7 years ago, because before that I was dating, and I struggled with women that actually had kids, because people talked about adoption and being a stepdad, but I just couldn't do it. I wanted my own kids, and it was either that or nothing. And it might sound really selfish, but that's how I felt. I just felt I couldn't do that. And I was lucky to find a lovely lady who didn't have kids and didn't want kids necessarily. I think she just turned 40 when I met her, because I'm 51 now. And from that, we've built a life, and we're really happy now. But that's really the journey I'd been on. And the key thing is actually becoming responsible and taking ownership for myself, and then understanding the power I had in me, and understanding that is what moves me in life, and not being defined by fatherhood. And that was the biggest change for me. And coming into, I've only been with the Clan of Brothers not so long, and with Stephanie at World Childless Week, and it's been amazing working with people, sharing with you guys, because I think that's the one thing that we don't do as guys, is that we kind of have this silent grief. We suffer in silence, and we find it difficult to express, because maybe we're programmed, like I was, to be self-reliant, because open up is seen as weakness, how we were brought up. We're not able to handle it. So obviously for today, it's really to raise the voice for recognition and awareness of the guys that have, like ourselves, are childless, because people don't realize, speaking with Robin, he pointed out to me, is that there's more guys that are actually childless than women, and that's something that people don't actually know. And down to it is because of how we are as guys as well. Sorry, I'm going to shut up now. That was my story. But what we can do, I'd like to do, is just to, from you guys, as to what we've just shared, is anything that has come to light that we can share with people as well.
Kevin, I'd just like to say thanks for sharing, because I know Robin and Andy quite well, and we've talked at length on many occasions. So look, thank you. I could see that was difficult.
Yeah.
And I get much feeling it now.
Yeah.
because your story, sort of mirrors mine in some respects, and like you, I was brought up to be quite self-reliant, in that my dad my dad worked a lot of, worked hard. Yeah. He was that, you know, what, 19, we're talking 1970s, 80s England, and he just worked hard to provide for the family, which actually meant he was never there. I never saw him. All I would get from my mum was, wait till your dad gets home. You know, but but one of the things and mum and dad are very simple people in that respect. You know, mum was a baby of the war. Her father was killed when they were very, very young. So my grandmother brought her and her sister up, and so they were just focused on getting by. You know, and there wasn't much more that it was almost like they didn't think they deserved any more than that. And so that sort of passed on to the kids in a respect of, you know, as long as they're healthy and fed and housed, that's enough. So we were left up to our own devices, you know. So I talk very fondly about this childhood I had in an English village, where I was up to my own devices. I mean, some of the stuff I got into is, you know, it's a wonder I'm still alive. But that, my sister and I talk about this a lot, and we realised that actually built resilience, because we had to, you know, we're always problem solving or risk assessing, probably not that well. But as adults, I can see how that formed me. So when you talk about that, you know, you got to, you know, it's up to you. It's up to you to sort it out. It's up to you to sort your life out. And one of the things I felt was very, very useless in this whole IVF, you know, trying to have babies things. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And it's only now that I realised that, one, there wasn't even a bloody vocabulary. And I know our community talks about this, about a vocabulary to explain or how we feel, because it's something no one ever talked about. You know, it was always the old spinster down the road, or, you know, there's a witch that lives in that house. With a lot of cats, and that's as far as it went. And so, but as guys, we, you know, we're pretty economical with vocabulary anyway, and so I didn't know what to do. So I just reverted back to that. I'll just be the strong one. And my wife will tell you that she said that was all well and good. I mean, but I didn't actually know if you cared when we were going through this emotional roller coaster, because I couldn't see anything. And I felt alone in, you know, and so that's a really scary thought, to think that she felt alone in our own marriage when I was trying to be the strong one to get us through. And yeah, it was a really weird time. But when that was a bit of a crux for me when I thought about that, and thought about, this is another reason why we guys need to get to talk about this, because you know what, when you said about the IVF process and said, you know, I was just, you know, I was there for her and I was just trying to do my bit. I was on another podcast actually, and someone quizzed me about that. And I tell this story about going to the clinic. It was our very first time, and I'd been there for the egg pickup. I was there holding Vicky's hand while, you know, this bloody long needle was going probing. And we've gone back to the bed, and the nurses come up and go, right, it's your turn, Michael. Here you go. Okay, well, all right. Go downstairs to the andrology department and they'll sort you out. Oh, okay. Young, foolish, naive, go down. And the corridor, I kid you not, was only about 3 feet wide. So I'm walking down this corridor, very claustrophobic. And on the left, there's this doorway with, you know, those half doors, you know, you can open them up and then they have a little counter on the top of the bottom bit. And the woman says to me, that there you go into that room there. Here's the key to the room, so it's the only key, so you can be assured no one's going to come in. And here's your, jar. Wash your hands. Don't get any other liquids in that. I go, okay, all right. She said, you'll find scotch in the cupboard. There's some magazines in the drawer. Off you go. Now, it was directly opposite this door that I had to go in, 3 feet. And the pressure that I'm now under to make sure that I give a good sample. Sorry if anyone gets offended by the gory details, but the pressure that I was under to make sure that the best little swimmers were in that jar, I never realized at the time, but now when I look back, was immense. And so here I am, I'm in the room, and what did she tell me? What was it I had to do? I mean, not that I've not done that before, but so she said to Scott, no, I've driven up here. I can't have any scotch. I've got to drive home. Dirty magazine. Oh, fuck. I feel like a pervo. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And so then there's a nice reclining chair in there. So I sat in there and it started to squeak. Oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. So the pressure's, more and more. And then of course, all right, okay, well, I'll bloody just have to stand up then. Fuck. All right, there we go. And I laugh about it now. I wasn't at the time, but I can tell you, I have, what do they call it? Not stage fright, performance anxiety. I must have, because it weren't happening. My forearm felt like I was bloody Popeye. Like, fuck, is this going to happen or what?
Mm.
Anyway, then the next guy comes along to the little counter, only 4 feet away from me, having a conversation with the woman with the jar and everything else. And fuck. Oh my God. And I'm just, here I am doing my business and I'm listening to someone else. They know I'm in here doing my business. Oh, this is not good. Anyway, needless to say, I eventually done it. I had a sweat up. Because when I went back to the ward, the first thing Vicky did, because she's now awake, and the nurse, they just started laughing at me. Now, what the hell happened to you? Apparently I look like I've just been dragged through a hedge backwards or something. And it wasn't until I talked about that and wrote about that some of the feedback I got from some other females was, that was really stressful, wasn't it? I never ever thought about that. And some of these women had IVF, and they said, my husband never told me this. I know it's now that I get the immense pressure that you guys are under. So what I'm saying is, Kevin, don't underestimate the pressure that you are under. Not to take it away from the fact that, our partners or wives at the time had to, were dosed up the eyeballs with all sorts of hormones, and Vicky, I know, was teetering on the edge of being overstimulated, which can be quite lethal. So yeah, don't underestimate that. But again, it's these conversations that we blokes need to be having, so that other guys who have been through the IVF process can identify with us and go, well, fuck, identify with us. Other guys that have, through circumstance, who have, their life has just not allowed them to get this opportunity, or we know of people that have, can't produce sperm, and the more we talk about this, the better. I'm going to shut up. Someone else can have a go.
Actually, it's great you brought that up, Michael, because I just dismissed that, and I thought about my own experience, and I thought this. I didn't obviously have the Scotch in the UK. They're not, as NHS don't have such a thing over here. It's like water, but I remember at the time the pressure, and when I did it, I thought, is that enough? That should have been more. It is what it is. You've got to just do it, and I said, make sure it's all in there. And looking back now, I think it's dismissed because it's supposed to be, that's what blokes do all the time in their spare time. But what you're right. At the time, psychologically, there's a lot going on inside you. There's a lot hanging on that, and there's a feeling of shame. How to get to that, and that's what I've just thought about. Is that it wasn't so much the physical that was for a guy in IVF; it's the mental pressure they have that I think isn't recognised sometimes.
Yeah, I'd agree with you both. I'm aware this isn't your experience as well, Rob, and not everyone's experience as the childless man. But yeah, it's where we went. It was plastic pot in a paper bag. There you go. And it was like Michael. It was literally opposite the receptionist. Brown, black leather sofas, and no Scotch. That wasn't. We're in a private clinic, but for NHS funded, but still no Scotch. But like, it wasn't. Real pressure, like you say. Have I got this right somehow? Like, is this enough? And it's just like a really bizarre experience. And there's that bit, and there's the injection. I remember injecting Rachel. There was the drive on her there and back. And I remember where I worked at the time, they're like, do you really need to go? And I was like, she's going to be having a general anaesthetic type thing. She can't really drive home. And emotionally, I need to be with her. And it was like work just didn't get that. This is a couple, this is something you do together, that you're having a baby together. And I was needed there for a part of it, but also the rest of the time, it's that mental side, it's that practical looking after that. Would you really want to go and have invasive procedures and then just drive yourself home down the motorway? Like, and it's just, so there's not just, I think it's underestimated our part in this thing by ourselves and perhaps close others, but it's really underestimated structurally. And I remember after our miscarriage in IVF, had about a week off, went back, didn't really want to go back to work, but they were like, well, we can't give you any more time and all this. And it's like, well, I know other people who've lost people or lost baby and they've had months and months off. And it's that same thing, that the impact of it is just not recognised. And it's not just how we're brought up, because I recognise that my dad being at work all the time and the provision, it was about being able to provide us with a house, etc. And it wasn't emotional. I get there's that side to it, but then there's the sort of bigger structures on top, and it's just like those, not having those conversations or having those impressions really doesn't help with trying to have a family and then processing when it doesn't click, because there is an innate desire in me to have children or to have children, but there was also a sense of this is what you do. It's almost like it's not a conversation we really have. And I just think there is people out there who have children who don't really want, and that must be a difficult situation as well. But it just seems like that's such a norm to have kids that when you can't, it feels really odd, like you are really an outsider. And I just wonder if there was more of a conversation, more of a truth around it, that there'd be less pressure, less that sense of I failed and less of a man. And I know I've took it from personal, but it is one of those conversations you don't have. And I know it's happening through maybe gateway and women that they're talking with HR, they're trying to change HR policies where this is recognised more, that time off is needed, that flexible working is needed, that you can't just go, oh, you're childless one, so you can't have the school holidays sort of thing. You can't have that time of the year off, or these people need to be off, so we'll just give you the extra work. And it's all that where it's, I'm just going to end up ranting about equality. And I know as a white male, I'm certainly not the most hard done by at all. There's a lot of privilege there, but it just, like a lot of subjects, we need to talk more, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think also one of the things is that, you know, one of the coping mechanisms for the, you know, for our community is to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. But unfortunately, what that also means is we're isolating ourselves from the rest of our community.
Mm.
And that's I guess that's where I saw, you know, where I could add value in that just being a vocal part of it and saying, look, it's okay. You know, it's okay to talk about it. And yeah, look, I know we wanted to focus on a couple of positive things, you know, from our talk about how we manage things. And that's where I get a lot of, I personally get a lot of satisfaction from just being able to talk on people. Well, I talk about my personal experiences, knowing that I'm talking on behalf of others because I know they're going through the same thing. And they're saying, you know, I find immersing myself in the community is great, because one of the other things I've found is through our collective struggles, it is one of the most empathetic bloody communities I've ever been part of.
Mm.
Because we can identify with each other and identify with the loss that we all experience, in whichever way we get here. And it's that is a beautiful thing. Not that we ever wanted to be there, but yeah, it's I find it's a beautiful thing that empathy is real. And there was another thing that I've just forgotten now, so that's my old man brain going working. So someone chime in, and then I'll think about it later.
Well, obviously with you, Robin, I take it was not IVF with you, but you didn't choose that, but with yourself.
Yeah, it was just the timing of relationships, really. And so in my mid-30s, I wasn't in a relationship, and that would have been, well, that was peak broodness for me. And it is for a lot of men, actually, when they sort of realize. I think there's a reflective process when you look around and go, where am I and where I should be? And really, keyword is should. Whose should is that? Is it your should, or is it society's should? And there is that looking at that arc of where I should be on that track and where I'm not. And then looking at that, actually, is that my should? Is it somebody else's? What should, or what do I really want, and how can I be? So it's all big existential stuff, and how to fit in. I think that was a thing for me. Although we're individuals, we're part of a pack. We're all unique, just like everybody else. And we all have extraordinary lives, but they're normal extraordinary lives. So there's that sort of trying to meld that together. And I was just thinking while you guys were talking about Darwin and the ascent of man, or the descent of man, whichever one, and like we're constantly mutating, but we're not only mutating biologically, we're mutating socially and economically. So we're always in a process of change. But the narratives around society are, you're fixed. I think for men, you're fixed, you're strong, you're doing this, and you're like a block, and you're regular. But inside, it's all churning away, and actually outside, it's all churning away, and you've got to try and pick a path and do the best you can. So for me, IVF wasn't an option. It was just coming through, really, and developed. And by the time I met my wife, I was 39. She was in her 40s, and she didn't want to take the risk at her age, because there is an age-related risk for both men and women. And so and people would say, well, why don't you adopt? And it's easy to get annoyed at that actually they're trying to solve an issue very simply. And there's no simple solutions to complex issues. And I can understand why they're trying to do that. They're trying to fit you into the same box they're in. But adoption isn't easy. It's not like you can just pop down the shops and get a baby. And also for me and for some of the men I've interviewed, actually reproducing my genes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
But after that, sorry, Michael.
No, I was just going to agree with you and when Kevin said about, you know, I wanted my child. I've got no evidence to prove it, but I think that's a very common thing with guys, is that I want it to be mine. And when you look at all the movies that we would watch, and I use not the Clan of Brothers, hang on, the Game of Thrones. I use the Game of Thrones as an example. Sorry for those who haven't watched it, even though I can't believe there's people on this earth that haven't watched it. But anyway, that's another thing. Come on, are you kidding me?
It's all right, Michael. I'm on your side.
You're gonna have to watch it now, because when you watch it, you know, the powerful, dominant male figures in this show, you know, they're producing a bloodline, and it's all about you know, what makes that story so rich is, you know, the history of these people and the fact that it will go on through their family and their children. And when you see, whoops, just dropped something. When you see all of the failed or damaged men in the show, they're all childless. And so we get pumped with this whole, you know, you will father a family and they will carry on. And I'm not quite sure if it's nature or nurture, but yeah, to me, I always wanted mine. And that, you know, Vicky would sometimes say, maybe we should adopt. I say, but let's try and have ours. And then people get a very short answer from me when they say that, oh, didn't you try to adopt now? I said, no, because by the end of it, we were fucked. We were broken. Sorry for my language, but I live in Australia. It's just normal vocabulary here. No, I was broken. No, it wasn't an option anymore. Couldn't even look after myself.
And today we haven't even touched on, you know, the alternatives such as donor sperm, how that would feel in this situation. I mean, that's throwing a real curveball into the whole feeling. As to me, it completely excludes you from the whole situation. You think, how would that feel? Like Michael, would that feel like my son or daughter? No, you know, I would have really found that very difficult to cope with. I think we go back to being guys about being strong, and it's about redefining what that strength is. It's reprogramming yourself. I find now that I've got just as much strength being vulnerable, sharing with people, going to my father, speaking to him as a man and saying my experiences and how I felt, rather than trying to tough it out and make out I'm cool. And to me, that shows real courage. When you become vulnerable and you put you're throwing everything on the line. The three other guys, you know, myself, we don't know each other, but there's four guys here that are, you know, willing to be vulnerable and share about their own experiences, and that shows real strength. And as guys, we've got to be more vocal in, you know, how we feel and our experiences, because that will encourage more people. This thing about toughing it out and, you know, withdrawing, really, that's hiding. At the end of the day, I hid. I wasn't being strong. I was hiding. I was hiding because I was fearful. And I realized that actually reaching out to somebody and experience, and I do it now. I engage in conversations with people that ask me what I do, and their fathers and non-fathers, and they're amazed as to the fact that I can talk openly about it, and they engage as well. So we've got to change them, because I think as guys, when, you know, in our program, when a guy becomes vulnerable to us, we go, whoa, hang on a minute. Whoa, hang on. No, that's, you know, you overwhelmed me here now. I can't cope. I'm not used to this. And it's really, that's got to change. But we can only change that by reaching out, becoming vulnerable to people and saying, hey, I've got to tell you something here. This is really important. I want you to hear this because I need to share this with you. And that's, you know, the narrative I take. And I'm telling you, that's the hardest thing I've found, was actually sharing. You know, all the macho bravado and stuff goes out the window, and you're there to be shot at.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's taken me quite a while to, and now I can't help you. Now I can't bloody stop it. But, you know, to let the emotion, you know, well up, because I kept it, you know, down a lot, you know, and so now, for instance, on the podcast, I'll probably have a cry at least once or twice in the podcast, but that's okay. That's all right. You know, I can do that. I'm allowed. And I know what you know, there's this, you know, thrown around about, you know, being vulnerable is, you know, being vulnerable is courage. And I know some people don't get that, but it's bloody true. It's real. I'm living it. You know, I make myself vulnerable all the time. I mean, I've just talked about, you know, having a wank into a bloody plastic cup. You know, but yeah, I totally agree with you, Kevin. Totally agree with you.
No, yeah, I'm saying that.
And there's a liberation in vulnerability as well. So you're not carrying a lot of stuff that you were carrying before. And I think one of the things this sort of thing does is people who are listening can form their own narratives and get their own stories out and adapt. So you can say, well, I was a bit like Michael, I was a bit like Kevin, I was a bit like Andy. These are the bits that are the same. And you're a bit like me, maybe. So I can weave my own story. I can write my own story. And that means when I'm out, I've got something there. So when Mike was saying, I didn't know what to say, and I think this is something that men, what are the words I can use? Well, you can pick these threads from around and weave your own story and just keep that in your pocket. So when people say, oh, why don't you adopt? Here's my response to that. And you can engage on that sort of level as heart to heart, human to human.
And I just want to stress what Robin says is that every story is important. Every story is valuable. It's to be stressed because it's unique. So don't think that your story is not valuable or important. It is. It's as important as everyone else's that's in this situation. Treasure it.
Yeah. You're as valid as anybody else.
And
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that when I started telling my story, started removing the masks, it felt like I was hiding in plain sight. I was still working 3 jobs, crikey. I was still just going about things, trying to function, but I didn't feel connected. I didn't feel strong. I just felt exhausted. But when I started sharing my story, when I admitted that I needed to work on this, when I was vulnerable, I connected to people. That's, I think, how I ended up meeting Michael, Rob, Sarah, full stop, etc., Berenice, Jodie. And it's like, yeah, you tell your story, people connect to it, both childless people, but there was also other people I knew. They're like, oh, that's when you start having conversations, and again, it feels much more real, much more alive than, I don't even know what conversation I'd have had with those people when we were in the pub. If I hadn't shared that story, it'd have been okay, but that is it. It wouldn't have been as deep as real. And telling those stories then also got me to think, actually, I'm okay. It's still a roller coaster. That's life. Becoming is a process, but there was that sense of, I'm on a different roller coaster. Maybe this one's a bit more alive, a bit more real. It's not, I don't know, safe. It's not like small, I don't know. Yeah, this one's got some excitement in it. Not a fan of roller coasters as it is, but, but it is that sense of being vulnerable. I think, yeah, there is a real strength there, and telling your stories, courage. And I think it helps yourself, but I think it also does help others. But like Robin said, you give other people threads, narratives, there's chances to connect, and it's just really important to remove the mask, to stop hiding, and to live. And I think that's what being vulnerable allows us to do, is actually to live.
No, it's very true. Very, very true.
Well, it's been an amazing discussion today. I always love these because I learn something just listening to you guys as well, and it helps me to actually understand, and when I can recollect and tell my story, more insights come. I'm sure you have the same thing, and that's the importance about sharing. So I suppose before we go, if we go around and just, you know, like a summary of a few words of today. We start with you, Michael.
I don't know if you've guessed, but I love this sort of thing. You know, I really love connecting with the community, and I particularly like, you know, meeting with you guys. I'm just really pissed off about this bloody pandemic, because by now I would have had a beer with at least Andy and Robin, because we'd arranged to meet just as the pandemic had bloody come in, and I would have given you both a big hug. So be ready for that, because that's what I do. Big hairy me comes and gives a hug, because I think that's important, and it just shows so much. And that's also part of, you know, this. It's about, you know, giving each other warmth and showing we care, because yeah, sometimes we're not good at doing that, and sometimes that's what we need. You know, we know it. I can feel the emotion coming up now, but you know, sometimes it's just knowing that there's brothers there. You know that there's someone who really understands you is there, and so yeah. No, thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate the fact that you've organised this, and if things go well, I'm looking forward to more.
Definitely, Mike. Thank you, Michael. Robin.
Just what Michael said, really. He's taken all the narrative, coated it in honey, and served it back to us. I think it's something about validity, and well, let's go with reproduction and validity through reproduction. I mean, status-wise, reproducing as a man, yeah, biologically is one of it, but there's social, economic, and personal, and being in it, just being you. So we're all reproducing, and it's a revolving glitter bottle reproduction, but in all different areas. And okay, one area has not worked so well, but there's other areas that you can really work at and be really successful at, and take pleasure in that. And I think what I do is just take pleasure in the here and now and the everyday. And so, like the beauty of a tree or a flower or something happening. Yeah, so that's what I think. That's what I think.
Thanks, Robin. Andy.
Yeah, I suppose first of all, just thank you for being part of this, for you, Kevin, to organise this. It's just really nice to meet up, to share, to talk. And I think the thing I get from that is the normalising of this, that hearing Michael's story again, Robin's story again, and now your story, Kevin, is that, yeah, my response is how I felt. There's something in common, that it isn't specifically about me. I think that normalising is really good to sort of allow us to not feel a failure, to go towards vulnerability, to not hide. And the other thing is, I've got a long day of writing ahead of me today, And it's like I got up and I was tired. I didn't really feel like it. A bit nervous about everything, and then I'm doing this, and I feel energized. It's still going to be a long day of writing, but I'm looking at it differently because I just feel like this has been really rewarding, really connecting, and I think, yeah, it's given me something that I didn't have during those years of trying the grief, that there wasn't that connection. So I was just going through unhappy, struggling to find joy. And it's like actually having this vulnerable conversation is strangely enjoyable. And that's what, yeah. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. For myself, it's been wonderful being welcomed into the Clan of Brothers and meeting you all. And I'm like Michael, I'm a serial hugger as well. So if I met up, there'll be two people squeezing you, because that's the COVID is put paid to that. There's a lot of people that experience it, a Kevy hug, as they call it. My other half calls it a bear hug. I'd love this sort of work because it also continues my process, because I think we still are healing. So it's continual healing from this. Like Andy, it re-energizes me to engage. It also it allows me an opportunity, it sounds weird, but to defend people like ourselves as well, and to actually, you know, create and raise that voice that we are significant, we are important. And by doing this, I actually look at guys on the same level. Before I didn't. I don't feel myself any less a man than at one time in my life I did. And I think that in itself helps with the engagement of people to understand the situation, not just childless men, but men who are fathers or men who are single. And I think that will hopefully help the sort of programming that we all had. And I grew up in the 70s myself, and it seems silly. I was watching the X-Men the other day, and now there's obviously all these comics. They were written at the time when all the heroes were males, and there was this bit at the end where there was men and women together, and they all said, "Oh, we're all X-Men." So it tells you that there's been a change, but they can't change the brand. But obviously, it's no longer just about men. So there's still an evolution and reprogramming to go with. And I think the work that we're doing, and the fact that we can help people, that's what I like doing, helping people, is really beneficial and, you know, satisfying for myself. So thank you, all of you. And it's our intention, as Michael says, to actually do more of these. So from today's program, if you do have any specific topics that you'd like to, you know, for us to raise, or maybe come and share with us, please be in touch on the Facebook site. But for now, it's thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
No worries.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, it's a